A surprise announcement a day after he shed tears during the Pope's visit to the nation's capital. U.S. House of Representatives Speaker John Boehner will leave Congress at the end of October. His resignation comes after struggling with repeated rebellions by conservatives during a tumultuous 5-year reign as the chamber's top Republican. Let's say hello to the Fresh Outlook think tank. I'm joined by Alan Sanders, political science professor at St. Peter's University. Jose Lopez, physics professor at Seton Hall University. Albert Goldson, Indo-Brazilian Associates, a New York City-based boutique global advisory firm that provides international political and security assessments. And joining us live via Skype is Rich Ruffino, political commentator and blogger, and my good buddy now, since he's been appearing on Fresh Outlook. We'll start with you, Rich, since you're up in the monitor. Why is this guy crying all the time? Is it because he has bourbon at 10 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, that's very possible. And I'll tell you one thing, if I'm running the Indoor Tanning Association right now, I am paying top dollar to hire him as my lobbyist. I don't know why he's crying so much. Perhaps it's because he just has such a hard job, such a very perilous position in many respects. It's a very fractured Republican Party. You have the business wing, which he seemed to represent, kind of the business bloodline, the K Street lobbyists. Ones who, for example, wanted to continue to fund the Import-Export Bank, and then you have the more Tea Party, the more libertarian wing of the party, who essentially does not really see much of an affirmative role for the federal government. So he's really between kind of these two wings. And the Tea Party wing, he needs 218 votes to sustain himself as Speaker. And Congressman Mike Meadows of North Carolina had actually proposed a resolution that the Speaker essentially resign the chair. So he's in a very precarious position. He wanted to resign last year, and it's really a position in many respects where you can't really get much done. Now that he is announcing he's resigning, there's probably more of a chance that there will not be a government shutdown, because in a sense he's a lame duck, but he also has nothing to lose. But it looks like it's probably going to be Kevin McCarthy, his underling, I guess, the House Majority Leader, who's a little bit more conservative, at least in style, by the way. If you look at John Boehner's voting record, by the way, it's very conservative. Before he became the Speaker of the House, he had like a 96% conservative voting record, but his temperament was moderate, and he was seen as being too close, too willing to associate with the Democrats, and that really hurt him with the with the Tea Party bloodline, which is really taking control over the Republican Party today.
Okay, Rich, I'll get back to you in just a moment. Albert, is this a sign that the Republican Party is in disarray a little more than a year before the big election?
I think it just proves that the GOP certainly is not a monolithic party. There's good news and bad news for the GOP. The bad news is, of course, they are fractured. They are in disarray. Of course, this came as a surprise. They wanted him to leave, but the timing and when he left basically leaves a number of factions really vying for power as to who's going to take the lead to hold the torch for the GOP. The good news is for the GOP is that they can formulate a party that would be able to strengthen themselves in the run for the presidential elections next year, as long as they somehow deal with Mr. Trump. That's really the one last remaining big obstacle that they have. But first they have to get their act together initially, and then they can go forward.
It's interesting that Albert brings up Donald Trump, and I think it's because people don't cheer for moderation. The reason why Trump is wildly popular is because he's a zealot. And people are sick of mealy-mouthed politicians. They're sick of compromise and getting it done halfway. They elected a Republican Congress and a Republican Senate to get things done a conservative way. And that hasn't happened under Boehner.
Well, I think people voted for a conservative Congress, and it has been a conservative Congress. It just hasn't been conservative enough for the 30 or 40 members of the Tea Party, or the ones who affiliate themselves with the Tea Party. We just heard a very important comment. We will get a resolution or a piece of legislation to fund the government, and in fact, for the next month, I would expect the Congress to be more productive than it's been in many weeks, in many years. Why? Because there is a solid majority in the House to actually get things accomplished. What has happened is that the 30 or 40 have been basically the tail has been wagging the dog. The Republicans have been stymied by those 30 or 40 members of the Tea Party that refuse to do anything. So now that, of course, the Speaker is liberated, he can actually rely on Democratic votes and the mainstream Republicans in the House. He will be able to accomplish much more in the next month than he has been able to accomplish in many weeks, which goes to point out that the real problem is that we have a minority that insists in our way or no way, while there's a majority that is willing and ready to compromise and to reach agreements to actually run this country well.
Jose, what's your assessment of Boehner stepping down? Why do you think it happened? Is it because he's being pressured out by the right?
I think definitely it's that. And I think he just reached a point where he felt this is it. I can't do anymore. I'm going to be 66 in November. And actually, he had mentioned in some media reports that he was contemplating retiring on his birthday in November. And I think he just said, look, I want to liberate myself from these shackles, which, as Alan is pointing out, exist. There's these shackles, these special interests, these the Tea Party, these things that are creating this havoc in the government where there really is a bottleneck. Nothing is getting done. And if he releases himself from that, which now he does, where he's not answering to anyone except what he thinks is right at this stage, I think it's liberated him. He looks like a liberated man right now.
No more tears.
No.
Maybe that'll be a song. Who knows? Let's turn to Rich Rubino. Rich, put on that magical cap that you wear when you're not on camera. Look into that crystal ball deeply. Tell us who you think the next Speaker of the House will be and what his or her background will be.
I think it's going to be Kevin McCarthy. He's really been a meteoric rise. He's the House Majority Leader currently. He was actually just elected in 2006, believe it or not. It would be the biggest rise since probably Congressman Chris rise in 1891, for example. He took over Bill Thompson's seat. Remember, Bill Thompson was a very powerful chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. They say he's a little bit more conservative in terms of, for example, being opposed to the funding of the Export-Import Bank, which was kind of a litmus test issue in terms of a lot of libertarian conservatives view it as corporate welfare or corporate capitalism, whereas a lot of more establishment Republicans say it creates jobs and it creates jobs overseas, for example. But as I say, there's going to be a Tea Party challenge for him. One of the challengers will be Daniel Webster. There's what's called the Freedom Caucus in the House, and the Freedom Caucus, many of the members of the Freedom Caucus had actually met with Boehner and told him that they've lost confidence in his leadership. So I think that McCarthy's going to win, but he's going to win essentially. He's going to be put on warning in a sense that if he compromises just a little bit, essentially there will be some sort of a challenger to him. It actually reminds me a little bit of what happened back in 1959 when Charlie Halleck took on then minority leader, Joe Martin. He had been the majority leader. He had been the Speaker of the House, and he took him on. He said, "I'm an 100% Republican." So if McCarthy has become Speaker, he has to, in many respects, propitiate the libertarian right wing of the party, or else, there's, as I say, there's about 24 to 30 members of the Tea Party wing who do not see an affirmative role for government. And if he teeters a little bit in terms of looking to compromise with Nancy Pelosi, I think there will be another challenge to him. But right now, I think it will be Congressman McCarthy, and it's a meteoric rise. He's paid his dues. He just, as I say, he's just got in there in 2006, and he's already about to become Speaker of the House.
All right, Rich, thanks very much. We'll leave it there for now. This, of course, impacts the 2016 presidential race. On the Republican side, we've seen Donald Trump slipping maybe slightly. I know that story's been played up a lot by the media, but one person indisputably has been rising, and that is Carly Fiorina. My assessment is nobody's going to beat her in a debate. She's the most eloquent speaker of them all.
Maybe it's one thing you have people, candidates debating and, of course, supporting their positions. Again, it's quite early. This is only September. It's a quite long roadway to go to as far as the GOP nomination is concerned. So you still have a number of dark horses in the background that still have plenty of time to come forward and to be able to, of course, close that gap with Donald Trump. I believe he's going to fade eventually. But there are a number of other candidates, even though Mr. Carson has infuriated quite a number of people, well, so has Donald Trump, and his ratings went up as well. So I think it's really going to come down to whoever can present their policy package the best, and we're going to find out exactly how that sorts out, I would say, in early 2016.
The Pope bothers me because he speaks too slowly. There's another man who's on TV a lot who speaks too slowly who drives me nuts, and that's Ben Carson. He is not the most articulate dude in the room. He might be a brain surgeon.
He is a brain surgeon.
I'm not, but I talk fast, okay? What's your sizing up of the field right now, Alan?
Well, my sizing up of the field is now we're in the process of reassessment. And although Mr. Trump, I do think he is fading, by the way, but the other way to look at it is he's not moving forward. Okay, he's staying pretty much where he's been. He may have peaked, and there are some signs that he is losing his footing. He spoke to a conservative group just yesterday or the day before yesterday, called Senator Rubio a clown, and was loudly booed. And it tends to show you that his kind of childish pranks and his childish comments, his whole attitude is wearing thin. And so I think we're at a tipping point now. Now, who will come on strong? I mean, we're at the flavor of the month kind of stage of the campaign, and that's normal, okay? Carly Fiorina has risen because of her performance on the debate. Ben Carson sort of rose, but now he seems to have stalled as well. Don't forget that Mr. Trump, who is so-called leader, is in the 28% range. That means there's 70% of voters and Republicans who don't like him. So we're really at the stage where people are going to start to really analyze. And one thing we forget is, how people think about politics in the summer. When you can vent your anger and you can sort of shout and yell, I'm not going to take it anymore, or whatever your complaint is. That tone and that attitude tends to change when you realize that you're going to be voting for the person who will have his finger on the nuclear button.
We're running out of time, but I'm going to give you 30 seconds, Jose. Carly Fiorina, to me, is an articulate speaker, but she's an empty suit. She did nothing for Hewlett-Packard, and she did nothing for Lucent, and she was behind a failed deal between HP and Compaq that cost a lot of people a lot of money.
As you can argue with any of the non-politicians here, I mean, we've just talked about three of them, Ben Carson and Donald Trump and Carly Fiorina. I mean, all of them basically have no political experience. We've been talking about compromise and working across the aisle and working with Democrats and such to get government done. How are these people that have no government experience, have no they're not even politicians in that sense, how are they going to run a country?
They might just show you. You never know. They might just surprise you, considering nothing gets done in government, or so it seems. Final word to Rich Rubino. Rich, what is the headline coming up this week? Again, I want you to be the great prognosticator for us and tell us what people will be talking about for the 2016 election this coming week.
I think this is Carly Fiorina's week, but remember, she ran for the Senate in California. She got 50% in the primary in a three-way race, and once the general election came, and Barbara Boxer just went after her, completely excoriated her about her record in business. She lost that race by 10 points, so she's an electoral empty suit in many respects as well. But I think that this is going to be, just like there was Ben Carson's week, there was certainly Donald Trump's month and a half, and now there's probably Carly Fiorina's week. But as I say, I think it's going to be ephemeral.
All right, her 15 minutes in the spotlight, so to speak, perhaps lasting a week. Rich Rubino, thanks very much. The rest of the Fresh Outlook think tank will be back after this. It is time for the lightning round when we come back.